Hello everyone, this is Remlex from 40k Theories, and welcome to the April 2024 edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Now, let's jump into the questions. Voice of the Emperor asks, why does Fabius Bile look as wrinkly as a raisin and, for lack of a better term, like shit? It's because he's suffering from a condition known as the Blight, which is basically space cancer. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, the Blight was an artificial flaw that was added to the gene seed of the Emperor's children following the subjugation of the Selenar gene cults, basically as a last-minute fuck you to the Emperor. Now, the Blight would only affect those Terran recruits for the Emperor's children because most of them got killed off during the course of the Great Crusade, so I think Bile is like the only member of the Legion left who still suffers from it, and the only reason he hasn't died yet is because he's constantly swapping bodies. Brandon A asks, who or what is the true machine god? The Void Dragon or something else? We don't know. It could be the Emperor, it could be a shard of the Void Dragon, it could be Vashtor, it could be some completely different warp entity we haven't encountered yet. I think the original idea was for it to tease that it was the Void Dragon, but with the Grey Necron retcon changing the Catan from whole entities to just shards, I don't think it would work quite as well, so yeah, long story short, we don't know. Why are artificial intelligences not revered by the Adeptus Mechanicus when they can be considered the true children of the machine? The Cybernetic Revolt. That's why. The period where artificial intelligences rebelled against humanity and almost drove the human race into extinction. That's why they're not revered, they are considered abominations against humanity. And while the Adeptus Mechanicus like to make themselves closer to the machine, they are still human at the end of the day, so yeah, that's why. Khan, Araman and Lucius are considered to be the champions of the Chaos Gods, but Malus has yet to get one. What would you like his champion to be like? For any sort of hypothetical champion of Malice, I would like them to go full in on the idea of chaos as a self-combative, self-destructive entity. A chaos champion embodying literal chaos, not chaos as in, the chaos gods, I mean chaos as in the very metaphysical concept of chaos, the opposite of order, that kind of thing. So maybe have him go out and exclusively attack, other chaos champions. Not as a loyalist, not as a loyalist by any means, but as a chaos champion who just fights other chaos champions because, chaos being the snake that eats its own tail, so to speak. Austin Horner asks, given how the Black Rage is now the visions of Sanguinius' death he experienced before his death rather than the memory of his actual death, do you believe that the Black Angel that represents the Rage in the Warp and is currently sealed in Mephiston is actually connected to the soul of Sanguinius, or is merely a manifestation of the chapters of the Blood's fear of the Rage? It could be either or, to be honest. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about the Black Angel and the Gold Angel because I've still yet to read Darkness in the Blood, but from what I hear, it's entirely possible it could be either way. Personally, I like to think it's just a manifestation of fear. In essence, I know people like to say, oh, Space Marines, they know no fear, even though they actually do, and they've acknowledged this multiple times, they just react to it completely different to other humans, but I digress. I think the idea of it being more of a psychological thing, rather than it being tied to an actual, eldritch entity like the Black Angel, is more interesting and, better for storytelling rather than just, oh yeah, it's because of some, weird demon thing doing it, rather than, it's just a deep down, deeply rooted psychological flaw kind of thing. I think the psychological flaw is a much more interesting option. Pentadeuce asks, are there demons that don't serve one of the Chaos Gods? Yes, there are. The most common example in this regard would be that of Furies, but there are other ones as well, such as Chaos Imps and a whole variety of Chaos Steeds and some other things as well. But yeah, Furies are the most common example. Do we know what the chances for a new aspirant to become a Space Marine actually are? No, because it depends on a variety of factors. The source of the population is one factor, the gene seed in question is another factor, because if you're trying to make a Raven Guard, for example, Raven Guard gene seed is notoriously unstable, even to the point where, for a time the Raven Guard had to basically drag out their reserves all the way from the Terran gene vaults in order to make new Astartes, because their current gene seed stocks on Kievar were basically incompatible with pretty much anyone, so they had to use the Terran stocks, which were much purer. Regardless though, the main common consistency is that the odds of an aspirant becoming a Space Marine are incredibly low. Adorg asks, given how Horus rebuked Chaos before dying and the Emperor said, "I wait for you and I forgive you," is there a chance for a loyal Horus soul to come back in some way? Maybe, but I think it would be very unlikely. I mean, we know that in Slaves to Darkness, shards of Horus' soul were still, wandering around the realm of Chaos, because there was one piece of Horus' soul that was fighting in the realm of Khorne, there was one trying to navigate the Crystal Labyrinth of Tzeentch, there was one stuck in the Garden of Nurgle, and, so on and so forth. Because, Malagus the Twisted, he saw these shards when he was trying to get, Horus' soul back to try and wake him up after he got, stabbed with the spear of the Emperor. So, it's not impossible, but I do find it incredibly unlikely personally. Zero Hits asks, say the Age of Sigmar Skaven accidentally bore a gnaw hole into 40k, and they end up in the sewers of Terra somewhere near the Imperial Palace. What happens? I imagine something very similar to what happened when the Custodians found out that there were Gene Stealer cults on Terra. Mobilize a shield host and go exterminating. Kill everything you can see, basically. If Skaven turn up, in the Imperial Palace, in the bowels of the Imperial Palace, somewhere like that, I can imagine the Custodians trying their very best to try and purge that infestation as quickly as possible, provided they learn about it quick enough. So lots of dead Ratmen and lots of pissed off Custodians. And finally, Griffin of Might asks, are there any abhumans besides the Leagues of Votann you wish received more attention, either individuals or entire strains? Yes, Stumper Muckstart. Stumper Muckstart was a rattling special character from the 2nd edition Imperial Guard Codex who was said to be one of the greatest marksmen in Imperial history. Like, he could shoot 5 credit pieces out of the air with a single shot, that kind of thing. And he was so good, he ended up making all these wagers against the other guardsmen and made a shit ton of money. So much so that it got brought to the attention of the commissars, and they basically said right, you're being put on special assignment duty, and if you do your duty, we'll ignore all this, illegal gambling you were doing, okay? And Stump was like, okay. And afterwards, all of his earnings got confiscated, so poor Stumper. But yeah, I would love to see at the very least, a novella about him, because he could be a very fun character. I feel it could be a very, very good character. A very enjoyable character, something along the lines of the Red Gobbo, so to speak. You know how the Red Gobbo's got a whole bunch of novellas? I think a bunch of Stump and Muckstart novellas could also work quite well, as a fun little romp. Are there any instances of Xenos trying to get STCs to access tech that humans used to have millennia before? Not to my knowledge, no. Are there any instances of an entire Xenos race being sanctioned to exist by the Imperium because they were useful? Yes, the Jakaro. And that concludes this edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Until next time, this has been Remlays from 40k Theories, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye!